Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack fascinating topics and really get straight to the good stuff. Today we're plunging into a review of Goosebumps, Terror in Little Creek for the PS5. You remember R.L. Stine, right? Of course, the master of those childhood scares, those books that, filled our shelves, sparked our imaginations with just the right amount of fright. This game tries to capture that exact magic, and, well, we're here to figure out how it attempts to pull that off. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, exactly. Our mission today is really to dig into how this game functions almost as a starter kit for the horror genre. The review we're looking at, it makes a pretty compelling case for it appealing to, well, both younger players just dipping their toes into spooky stuff, and also, nostalgic adults who grew up with those classic books. It's described as a bit scrappy, maybe, but definitely with a surprising amount of spirit and intentional design behind it, too.
Right, and what makes this really interesting for you listening in is exploring how a game can successfully be both, well, creepy and fun. Without leaning too far one way or the other. What are the specific design choices that hit that delicate balance? Especially when you're trying to cater to such a mixed audience like preteens ready for a thrill and grown-ups looking for a comforting throwback.
Well, the review really highlights that the game doesn't try to be Silent Hill or something intense like that. Instead, it embraces a more whimsical, almost theatrical approach to its horror. Think less jump scares, really, and more atmospheric tension, plus creature designs that are spooky but, never truly grotesque. For instance, the monsters, they often have this exaggerated, almost cartoonish quality. Keeps the fear manageable for younger players. It's more about building suspense, like knowing something is lurking, rather than delivering outright terror.
That's a really clever distinction. So, when the review calls it scrappy, does that connect to this aesthetic choice? Or is it more about the overall polish? I mean, could that potentially detract from the experience for an adult player, maybe looking for something a bit more refined?
That's a great question. And the scrappy aspect, as the review kind of points out, isn't necessarily a weakness. It's more about its charming, slightly rough around the edges feel. It's less about, cutting edge visuals or hyper-realistic animations. It's more about a purposeful focus on atmosphere and story that actually mirrors that B-movie vibe you'd kind of expect from a classic Goosebumps tale. In a way, it sort of leans into that low-budget feel, makes it feel more authentic to the source material rather than, trying to be something it's not. It uses its limitations, really, using them to its advantage by prioritizing creative solutions over, say, technical extravagance.
Okay, so it's not trying to compete with the big AAA titles. It's carving out its own specific niche. Makes sense. But how does that translate into the gameplay itself? Like, how do they make the horror accessible, but without making it feel, patronizingly simple for those nostalgic adults?
Yeah, and this is where those intentional design choices really, really shine. The review specifically mentions the combat system. It's very forgiving. You have an infinite slingshot, for example, so you're never running out of ammo or feeling totally stuck. Beyond that, the game avoids dead ends or overly complex mazes that could just frustrate players. Checkpoints are frequent, health regeneration is quick, so even if you do hit a challenge, you're back in the action almost immediately. This whole approach, it encourages exploration and engagement rather than punishing failure. It's about the joy of discovery and the thrill of those mild scares, not the frustration of hitting a wall you can't get past.
That's fascinating, actually. So they've really figured out how to balance that accessibility with genuine engagement. It sounds like Goosebumps. Terror in Little Creek truly nails that unique appeal then. It successfully blends accessible horror, perfect for younger players, with that undeniable nostalgic charm for adults. It really stays faithful to the spirit of the original books, right? Even with its low-budget affair status, as the review put it.
Absolutely. And what's crucial here, I think, is how the review highlights these intentional design decisions. Elements like the forgiven combat, they aren't just quirks. They're essential in making a genre that can often be pretty intense, genuinely accessible without, losing its core essence. And this raises an important question, maybe for you to consider. What other experiences in gaming or even media have you encountered that serve as really successful starter kits for complex or intense genres? And what specific elements do they use? What makes them work for new audiences or maybe returning ones?
Yeah, that's a great point. So the next time you encounter something that might seem a little simplified or maybe even scrappy on the surface, consider this. What hidden strengths might it actually possess? It could be genuinely worthwhile, perhaps even innovative in its own way, precisely because it focuses so clearly on the core experience rather than just, surface level polish. Something to think about.